The starport of Valoria 7 was alive with light, sound, and movement. Ships of all sizes zipped past. Cargo drones hummed overhead and travelers hurried to their gates. Among the crowd, a seemingly ordinary human family made their way through the busy corridors. Lena, a tall woman with sharp eyes, held the hand of her youngest child, Mia, while her husband, Mark, adjusted the strap of a worn backpack over his shoulder. Their older son, Leo, walked slightly ahead, his head tilted up as he watched the flashing advertisements for interstellar tours. To anyone watching, they were just another family traveling through the galaxy. But hidden behind their normal appearance was something the Galactic Empire could not understand. They were clever, resourceful, and patient, qualities that had kept them alive in situations far more dangerous than a crowded starport. Their journey to Valoria 7 had seemed routine. They had received travel clearance weeks ago, with proper identification codes and permits. But somehow, in the vast bureaucracy of the Empire, a mistake had occurred. The Empire's automated systems had flagged their identification as high-risk persons, a vague classification that triggered immediate detention. By the time the family reached the security gates, the officers were already waiting. 2 men and a woman clad in the Empire's dark uniforms stepped forward. Their faces were expressionless and their movements precise. Identification, please, the lead officer said in a voice that carried the weight of authority. Mark handed over the digital ID card he had shown countless times before. The officer's eyes scanned the information and paused. His fingers hovered over the controls as a soft alarm beeped. "This family is flagged for immediate transfer," the officer said, his tone flat but firm. "You are to come with us, what?" "There must be some mistake," Lena protested, her voice steady but urgent. "We have all the correct documentation." "Please comply," the officer said. "Resistance will only complicate your situation." The family exchanged glances. Mark nodded subtly and they followed without argument. They knew arguing would accomplish nothing. The Empire was powerful and its rules were strict, but humans had other ways to survive. The transfer was swift. They were escorted onto a shuttle and lifted above the starport. Through the viewport, Valoria 7 shrank into a cluster of lights, its bustling chaos replaced by the cold emptiness of space. The family remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Inside the shuttle, the hum of engines and the steady pulse of the life support system created a calm rhythm. Lena held Mia close, whispering small reassurances. Leo, sensing tension, tried to focus on small details. The slight tilt of the shuttle, the way the artificial gravity shifted, the faint hum of distant engines. Mark, the father, stared straight ahead. In silence, he analyzed every detail, the number of guards, the layout of the shuttle, the patterns in their behavior. He noticed small inconsistencies, a door that unlocked too easily, a camera that blinked at unusual intervals. He filed them away for later. It was not fear that drove him. Fear was a tool, but only if it was controlled. He had been called many things in his life, clever, ruthless, unstoppable, but never careless. The Empire had made a mistake and he intended to correct it. The shuttle docked with a larger orbital station, Imperial Containment Hub 9, a facility designed to hold high-risk prisoners safely and securely. From the outside, it was an imposing structure of gray metal, lit with cold white lights. It seemed impossible to escape. Inside, the family was led down a series of corridors that stretched in every direction. The walls were sleek, sterile, and unwelcoming. Guards flanked them at every step and automated drones hovered silently above, scanning for irregularities. Lena whispered to Mark, "Do you think anyone else is here?" "Many," Mark replied quietly. "Some for mistakes like ours, some for being different. The Empire doesn't understand humans. That is their weakness." The family was finally brought to a holding chamber. It was small but clean, with a view of the stars through a reinforced viewport. There was a table, 2 chairs, and a narrow sleeping area. The room was designed to be secure and comfortable, but it felt like a cage. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting a message from the station's central AI. "Welcome, human occupants. Your stay will be regulated according to Imperial standards. Any deviation from the rules will result in corrective measures." Leo tilted his head, studying the flickering hologram. "Corrective measures?" he asked. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. "It just means they are very strict, honey. We have to stay calm and observe. Mark, however, was already observing. The AI's voice had patterns, repetitions, and small glitches. The security systems were sophisticated, yes, but predictable. And predictability was a weakness. The family settled into the room, pretending to adjust to their new environment. They ate the standard rations, practiced polite compliance with guards, and maintained an outward appearance of calm. But every gesture, every look, every moment was a part of a larger plan in Mark's mind. As night fell outside the viewport, Mark spoke softly to Lena. "We need to understand this place. How it works, who runs it, what it fears. Everything is a puzzle, and every puzzle has a solution." Lena nodded, understanding completely. She had always known her husband was different. Ruthless, yes, but not cruel. He didn't need violence to win. He needed intelligence, patience, and the ability to see what others could not. Meanwhile, Leo and Mia began to explore small ways to test the room. They found that some panels could be manipulated, some sensors were less sensitive than they seemed, and some guards had predictable routines. Each discovery was a piece of the puzzle. Days passed. The Empire believed the family was trapped, compliant, and powerless. Yet in quiet moments they observed, learned, and communicated subtly. A flicker of the hand, a glance at a camera, a whispered question. Each action left traces of subtle influence on their surroundings. Mark even began speaking with the AI indirectly, posing questions, testing logic loops, and noticing patterns. The AI responded predictably, offering insights into the station's systems without realizing it was being taught. Lena and the children practiced patience, learning the rhythms of the guards, the timing of the routines, and the quirks of the facility. They were not just prisoners. They were students of the Empire, learning its weaknesses without ever needing to fight. One evening, as the stars streaked past the viewport, Mark spoke quietly to his family. "They think we are ordinary. They think we will obey. But humans are never ordinary. We adapt, we think. We survive. And when the time comes, we will turn their rules against them." Mia looked up at him with wide eyes. "Even without fighting?" Mark smiled faintly. "Especially without fighting. That is the power they do not understand." Outside the viewport, the vast emptiness of space stretched infinitely. The stars seemed indifferent, but they were witnesses to the beginning of something remarkable. A human family, trapped in the heart of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, quietly preparing to turn the system upside down. In the corridors of Imperial Containment Hub 9, guards spoke of the family as compliant prisoners, unaware that the most cunning human alive was among them. Mark's reputation was known in whispers in distant systems, but here, in this station, the Empire had no idea who they had captured, and that ignorance would be their first mistake. The family settled into their nightly routine, eating, resting, observing. Every action, no matter how small, was a calculation. Every glance a data point. Every word a test. They were prisoners, but not powerless. And in a place designed to break spirits, human ingenuity and patience began to sow the seeds of something far greater than fear. By the time the first week ended, the Empire believed they had won. The family appeared calm, obedient, ordinary, but behind their composed faces, strategies were forming. Patterns were being noted. Systems were being studied. The first week in Imperial Containment Hub 9 had gone smoothly, at least on the surface. The Empire believed the human family was just another compliant prisoner case. Guards walked past their room, drones hummed overhead, and the AI monitored every detail. But beneath the calm exterior, John, known in distant systems as the most ruthless human alive, was already at work. John sat at the small table in the family's chamber, observing the patterns of the station. His eyes flicked from the viewport to the small screen embedded in the wall. It displayed schedules, supply deliveries, guard rotations, energy fluctuations, and even minor maintenance alerts. Every line of data was a puzzle piece, and John loved puzzles. Lena leaned against the wall, pretending to read a ration pack label, but she was watching the guards with quiet precision. She noted how one drone hesitated near a junction, how a guard paused longer than necessary at the recycling bay, and how a small maintenance bot always returned to the same charging station at exactly 4:15. "Patterns are everything," John said softly, breaking the silence. "Everything in this station is designed to be predictable. Humans are not." Leo, their older son, tilted his head. "Even the drones?" "Yes," John said. "Even the drones. They follow logic and programming. And humans? He paused, letting the word hang. Humans improvise. Mia, sitting cross-legged on the floor, looked up. So we can beat them just by thinking? John smiled faintly. Exactly. Thinking, observing, learning. Violence is easy. Intelligence is rare. That is why humans survive. The days that followed became a quiet experiment. The family studied everything. Guard routines, AI communication patterns, door locks, even the flow of air through ventilation shafts. John made notes in his mind, using techniques no one else could recognize. Patterns within patterns, subtle cues hidden in the hum of the station. One evening, John noticed something curious on the display. The AI had an internal delay in processing minor security anomalies. A small glitch allowed the camera feed in their corridor to skip a frame every 10 minutes. It was a tiny imperfection, almost meaningless to the Empire, but to John it was an opportunity. We can communicate, he whispered to Lena. Subtly, without being noticed. Lena's eyes sparkled. The children? Exactly. He gestured toward Leo and Mia. They can help. Humans notice things machines don't. Timing, hesitation, micro-expressions. These are invisible to the AI. Over the next few days, the family developed a quiet system of communication. A tilt of the head, a small foot tap, the placement of a cup on the table. All were signals. They could share information about guard movements, sensor behavior, and timing without a single word being overheard. The children excelled in these exercises. Leo discovered that one guard always paused near the storage hatch to glance at the floor markings. Mia found that a small reflection on the viewport could indicate when a drone was approaching. These small insights were logged mentally, stored for later use. John realized that the Empire had underestimated humans entirely. They relied on brute logic, strict schedules, and absolute control. But humans thrived in the gray spaces, the unpredictable moments, the gaps between rules. It was not enough to simply observe. John wanted influence. He began small, almost imperceptible manipulations of the station. A minor pressure adjustment in the recycling vent caused a maintenance bot to shift its patrol route. A subtle flicker in a holographic display made a guard pause and check a console unnecessarily. The Empire noticed these anomalies. Officers whispered about weird coincidences and minor system glitches, but no one could trace them back to the family. The humans had become ghosts in their own prison. One morning, a new AI diagnostic routine began. The central AI attempted to reorganize the schedules to prevent any inefficiency. John studied the changes, predicting them before they happened. He had learned to read the logic of machines as if it were a map, predicting routes, timings, and reactions. Lena approached him quietly. Do you think we could use the engineer for maintenance? John's eyes gleamed. We will not need coercion. Only reasoning. All beings have logic, even if it differs from ours. If we show him the right path, he will follow it willingly. The engineer was a minor figure in the Empire's hierarchy, a human technician named Rill. He was curious, cautious, and extremely observant, traits that made him perfect for John's plan. Through careful observation, John discovered Rill's small acts of rebellion, minor schedule changes, undocumented system tweaks, small things that went unnoticed by superiors. John approached subtly. When Rill arrived at the recycling bay to check a malfunctioning sensor, John asked him a simple question. Have you ever noticed patterns in the routines? Rill hesitated. Then he nodded. Yes, sometimes. It seems like the AI is not perfect, John smiled. Perfection is an illusion. Rules can be bent. Systems can be taught if you know how. Over time, John built trust. Rill began to see the family not as criminals, but as teachers, as guides. The family never forced compliance, they only presented logic and observations. Slowly, Rill became a quiet ally, feeding them minor insights about the Empire's operations without even realizing the strategic advantage he was providing. Meanwhile, the children continued their small experiments. Leo learned to time the drone's patrols using the patterns in their humming. Mia discovered that the corridor lights flickered slightly before a guard passed, creating a subtle warning system. These skills were shared with Rill through coded gestures and notes, forming a small network of knowledge. By the third week, the family had mapped almost the entire section of the station they were confined to. They knew guard rotations, drone schedules, and sensor blind spots. They even anticipated minor AI logic shifts. It was not brute force that gave them this advantage, it was observation, prediction, and adaptability. One evening, Lena looked at John. "We're ready for more than observation, aren't we?" John nodded. "Observation is power, but action, subtle action, is influence. We are already affecting their systems. Soon they will be doing exactly what we want without knowing it." Their influence remained invisible to the Empire. Orders were followed precisely, but the Empire began to notice something unusual. Minor mistakes in reports, small delays in routines, subtle inefficiencies that were impossible to trace. Supervisors questioned the AI, the engineers, even the guards, but everything led to nowhere. The humans had become a hidden force, shaping the station's operations from within. At mealtime, the family sat together, sharing rations. The mood was light, but the tension of strategy hummed under the surface. Leo whispered, "Do you think they'll ever figure it out?" John shook his head. "By the time they do, we will be gone, or they will have learned something important. Either way, we win. Humans survive by thinking ahead." Mia piped up. "Even without fighting?" "Especially without fighting," John replied. "Fighting is easy. Thinking is rare. That is why humans thrive." Over the following days, John escalated the subtle moves. He introduced tiny inconsistencies in the AI's logic, creating micro-loops that made the central system question itself. Guards found doors unlocked for a moment, drones hesitated, and minor deliveries were shifted by a few minutes. Every small change reinforced the idea that humans could influence the environment without overt action. Rill continued to assist, feeding the family information about maintenance schedules, energy flow, and minor software updates. The family used this knowledge to stay one step ahead, always observing, always predicting. Even the children became strategists in their own right. Leo identified patterns in how guards reacted to sound, while Mia noted that small reflective surfaces could be used to signal subtle messages. They were learning the same lesson John had always known. Observation, intelligence, and creativity were more powerful than brute strength. By the end of the 4th week, the Empire's staff were confused and uneasy. They had captured humans they assumed were ordinary, compliant, and weak. Instead, these humans were altering the very operations of the station, without anyone being able to trace it. John looked out the viewport at the stars and smiled. They think they control everything, but control is an illusion. Intelligence, adaptability, and patience, that is real power. Lena nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. "The time will come when we act more openly," she said. "But for now, observation is our weapon." John's mind raced with possibilities. They could wait months, years even, and still remain unnoticed. Or they could begin orchestrating events that would change the station from within, teaching the Empire a lesson in human ingenuity. For now, the family continued their subtle moves, unseen but deeply felt. Every glitch, every delay, every anomaly in the station bore the signature of human intelligence. The Empire believed it was all coincidence, but John knew better. He whispered to his family, "The world underestimates humans because it cannot imagine how far intelligence can reach. The galaxy thinks it rules us. It doesn't. We are already influencing it, one quiet action at a time." By the 5th week in Imperial Containment Hub 9, the human family had quietly transformed from ordinary prisoners into subtle masters of the station. Every schedule, every routine, every minor glitch bore their unseen influence. Yet John, the father, understood that observation alone was not enough. Influence, connection, and foresight were the next steps. John had long realized that humans, with all their creativity, were not the only beings capable of thought. But most of the Empire's subjects, beings from distant planets, were bound by rules, programs, or hierarchy. They followed instructions without questioning, relying on protocols and rigid routines. Humans, however, thrived in gray spaces where rules could bend and where creativity ruled. "Patterns tell a story," John said one evening, gathering his family around the table. The viewport showed distant stars streaking by. "But stories need listeners. We need allies. Even small ones can tip the balance," Lena nodded. "You mean the other prisoners?" John smiled faintly. "Some of them. And one or two from the staff. Those who notice inconsistencies and feel curiosity instead of fear. Intelligence responds to intelligence, If we show them the right path, they will help themselves and us without knowing it. Their first ally emerged quietly in the maintenance wing, Rill, the curious technician John had subtly observed in the second week. He was cautious, hesitant to interfere overtly, but his mind was sharp. He had noticed patterns John had planted: a drone pause, a minor error in a report, a shift in the AI's logic. John began a slow, careful approach. He would speak to Rill not as a prisoner, but as a teacher, planting ideas in the form of questions, observations, and logical reasoning. "Have you ever wondered why minor mistakes appear in the logs?" John asked one evening as Rill checked a console in the recycling corridor. Rill paused, brow furrowed. "Sometimes, but the AI corrects them almost instantly." "I assumed it was random error." John shook his head subtly. "Not random. Patterns exist everywhere. Sometimes the smallest systems have the greatest opportunities for change." Rill blinked, intrigued. "Change?" "Yes," John said. "Change without breaking the rules. You can influence the outcome simply by knowing the patterns better than the system itself." Over the next few days, John guided Rill through subtle exercises. The technician began noticing minor flaws in the schedules, learning to predict the AI's adjustments, and realizing that small shifts could produce larger effects downstream. Rill thought of it as a puzzle, but he did not realize he was becoming part of a larger human strategy. Meanwhile, the children, Leo and Mia, continued their small experiments. They had noticed a minor communication error between two drones in the eastern wing. By creating small reflective signals, they could cause the drones to briefly misalign their patrols, creating windows of opportunity. Each adjustment was minor but cumulative, forming a growing web of influence throughout the station. Lena worked on the prisoners. Many had been detained for minor infractions or misunderstandings, and most had lost hope. She quietly spoke to them about observation, subtle action, and the power of understanding the station's patterns. She taught them how to notice small details, how to communicate silently, and how to anticipate routines without breaking rules. It was not an uprising in the traditional sense. There were no weapons, no riots, but a rebellion of intellect. The Empire had assumed that prisoners were powerless. In truth, they were learning to see the system as John did, turning every inefficiency, every routine, and every predictable action into leverage. John's network expanded slowly. He observed a small AI assigned to environmental controls, noting its behavior and learning its triggers. By posing questions to the AI in subtle sequences, he guided it to report more efficiently, indirectly benefiting the prisoners without the AI understanding why. Soon, minor anomalies became noticeable to the Empire. Doors unlocked for brief moments. Maintenance bots appeared in unexpected corridors, and reports contained inconsistencies that were impossible to trace. Supervisors blamed software bugs, human error, and equipment malfunctions, but none suspected that the humans inside the system were orchestrating it all. John's genius was in restraint. Each action was carefully calculated, leaving no trace. The family's influence spread like ripples on water, subtle but unstoppable. By the 6th week, even Rill had become a quiet accomplice, providing small but vital insights, energy flow schedules, minor AI routines, and routine patrol variations. One day, Leo approached John with excitement. "Dad, I think I found something." The supply drones always pause near the secondary docking bay at 1423, and the light flicker is a signal they are about to return to the main hub. John's eyes gleamed. "Excellent. That is predictable behavior we can use. Timing is everything. Humans notice what machines cannot." Mia chimed in. "And if we signal each other, we can predict their routes even better." "Exactly," John said. "Observation is intelligence. Coordination is power. And subtle influence without anyone knowing is control." Meanwhile, the Empire began whispering about strange occurrences in the hub. Minor errors that should have been impossible. Supervisors were frustrated, engineers puzzled, and even the AI's logic routines began to struggle. The humans were creating disturbances without ever touching a weapon, without ever breaking a major rule. John gathered his family one evening. "The seeds of change are growing," he said. "We are planting ideas, teaching others to think, and nudging systems to bend without breaking. This is human ingenuity. The Empire does not understand it. Yet this is how we win, Lena smiled. The prisoners, they are learning to see patterns too. They feel empowered. Yes, John replied. We teach without forcing, guide without coercion. The mind is the greatest battlefield and we are winning it quietly, invisibly. Their subtle influence spread beyond the prisoners and maintenance staff. Even minor AI-controlled systems began to operate differently. Energy flows adjusted slightly in response to patterns the family had introduced. Drone routes shifted by seconds, enough to allow small deviations from standard procedures. Doors unlocked for moments, giving prisoners and staff small chances to observe rather than obey blindly. One night, as the stars stretched across the viewport, John spoke to the family. We are no longer simply reacting. We are shaping outcomes. Soon even the Empire will feel our presence without knowing why. Influence is more powerful than force. Humans always find a way. The family continued to operate in silence. Guards believed everything was normal. Reports were filed without error. But beneath the surface, a subtle network of intelligence was growing. A network orchestrated entirely by humans, using observation, reasoning, and clever communication as their weapons. Even Rill, now fully integrated into their quiet strategy, marveled at the human family's ingenuity. I never realized just noticing small things could have such an impact, he admitted one evening. John nodded. Most beings rely on force, fear, or rules. Humans rely on observation, prediction, and creativity. That is why we survive. That is why we prevail. Lena looked at her children. They do not even see us as a threat. Yet we are changing the station entirely. One small move at a time. Yes, John said, and soon the Empire will learn a lesson in humility. Without a single drop of blood, without a single fight. They will see that intelligence, patience, and foresight are the greatest powers in the galaxy. By the end of the 7th week, the family's influence had reached nearly every part of the hub they could access. Drones hesitated where they should not. Maintenance schedules shifted subtly. And prisoners communicated quietly using gestures and signals. The seeds of rebellion were sown. Not a violent revolt, but a revolution of thought. Humans with nothing but observation, subtle action, and intelligence had begun to rewrite the patterns of the Empire from within. John looked out the viewport one last time that night, a calm smile on his face. They think they control everything. They think they understand the rules. But humans see beyond the rules. We are already shaping their world and they do not even know it. In the corridors, guards muttered about strange occurrences. Engineers puzzled over minor glitches, and the AI struggled to reconcile anomalies it could not explain. The humans were everywhere yet nowhere, influencing systems, teaching others, and quietly preparing for the next phase. And so, the family waited, observed, and guided. They had planted the seeds of rebellion, small but unstoppable, invisible but powerful. The Empire, with all its rules, systems, and control, had no idea that the humans it had captured were quietly turning the station into a web of intelligence, influence, and unseen power, because humans, John knew, did not need weapons to triumph. They only needed vision, patience, and the courage to think differently. The stage was set. The allies were in place, and the most ruthless human alive was quietly preparing the next moves, ready to prove that intelligence could achieve what armies never could. The seeds of rebellion had sprouted, and soon they would grow into a force the Empire would never anticipate. Weeks had passed since the human family first arrived at Imperial Containment Hub 9, and the subtle influences they had planted were beginning to ripple through the station. Every minor error, every shifted schedule, every small hesitation in the guards had been carefully orchestrated. Yet John knew observation and minor disruptions were not enough. The time had come for the grand plan, a series of moves that would turn the Empire's own systems against itself, all without violence. John gathered his family around the table. The viewport displayed the silent stars, vast and unchanging, yet filled with potential. We have learned the rhythms of this place, he said. We know the guards, the drones, the AI, and even the minor staff. Now it's time to orchestrate events that will make the Empire do exactly what we want, without them realizing it. Lena's eyes sparkled. We can't act too fast. They'll notice. Precisely, John replied. Subtlety is key. Small nudges lead to bigger effects. The station's entire logic system will carry out our plan for us because we understand it better than anyone. The first step involved the AI systems. John had already learned their patterns, understood their timing, and noticed their minor vulnerabilities. By sending carefully crafted sequences of instructions, phrased as ordinary maintenance requests and corrections, he manipulated the AI to adjust drone patrols and supply routes. These adjustments created predictable windows where the family could influence events unnoticed. Meanwhile, the prisoners who had learned from Lena were ready to play their roles. They were taught to move objects, adjust panels, and subtly signal one another, all within the rules. No alarms were triggered, no direct confrontation occurred, and yet, the station's routines began to shift in ways that the Empire could not trace. Rill, the maintenance technician, became a key player. He quietly rerouted power supplies, created minor diversions in delivery schedules, and ensured that the station's logic circuits followed John's invisible cues. Every action was small in isolation, but collectively they formed a web of influence across the hub. One evening, John explained the next phase of the plan to his children. "You two have been observing drones and patrols. Now your job is coordination. Small signals, tiny adjustments, just enough to guide outcomes. Think of it as a game, one where the rules always bend to human cleverness." Leo grinned. "So we're playing chess, but they don't know it?" "Exactly," John said. "And every piece on the board will move exactly as we want. Without a single fight, without a single weapon." Mia's eyes lit up. "I like it." The family began their work in earnest. Every step was calculated. A slightly delayed drone, a door unlocked for a brief moment, a minor energy fluctuation. These were their chess moves. The prisoners and Rill acted as pawns and knights, following the subtle guidance embedded in routines and schedules. The Empire began to notice anomalies, but only superficially. Supervisors discussed delays and minor errors in hushed tones. They could not find any cause because the humans had ensured there was none. Every glitch, every misalignment, and every hesitation traced back only to the station's own systems. John smiled quietly. "They think they control this place," he whispered to Lena. "But the truth is, control has shifted, slowly, subtly, and invisibly. Soon they will follow our plan without ever realizing it." The next phase involved creating small diversions that would allow the family to gain greater insight into the station's operations. Using the AI's predictability, they orchestrated minor system failures that drew guards and engineers to specific areas. Meanwhile, prisoners were subtly encouraged to explore corridors they normally would not, recording observations and sharing silent signals. Every small event fed into a larger system of patterns that John had mapped. The Empire believed it was reacting. In truth, it was moving according to John's design. Even the AI, with all its programming, was unwittingly carrying out human strategy. Then came the moment for their first visible but still non-violent action. John instructed Rill to reroute a supply drone to deliver a small message to the central command station. It appeared as a routine logistical adjustment, but the message contained carefully embedded information designed to highlight inconsistencies in the Empire's scheduling. When the command station processed the message, the AI and human staff discovered multiple errors that were technically impossible given their protocols. Panic ripples spread among the supervisors, and for the first time they questioned the reliability of the system itself. John observed it all calmly. "Step 1, he said. "The Empire begins to doubt itself. That is always the first victory." Lena nodded. "They do not suspect us at all. Every change seems like an internal problem." "Exactly," John replied. "Humans manipulate without force. The Empire cannot fight what it does not see." Over the following days, the family escalated their plan with careful precision. They introduced sequences of minor disruptions that forced the Empire to reroute personnel, change drone schedules, and adjust AI parameters. All actions were subtle, invisible, and within the bounds of regulations. Yet collectively, these nudges created a situation where the Empire's staff were reacting to problems the humans themselves had created. Even the prisoners played their part. They carried out small acts of observation, reporting what they saw using coded gestures and indirect signals. Rill continued to feed the family essential operational data, always believing he was helping to optimize the station's functioning. John explained the principle to his children one evening. "The key to influence is indirect action. You do not force, you guide. You do not strike, You teach the system to strike itself. Humans can change outcomes without confrontation. That is the power they do not understand. Leo leaned back in his chair. So we're winning without anyone knowing it? Precisely, John said. By the time they realize, the results will already be in motion. And humans will always be ahead. The grand plan's climax was a coordinated sequence that required every element of their subtle network to work in harmony. The AI, guided by John's logical nudges, created a series of temporary diversions. Guards were drawn to areas where they were least needed. Drones followed slightly altered patrol paths, opening corridors that were normally restricted. Prisoners and Rill acted in precise timing, ensuring that all moves aligned with John's calculations. On the day of execution, the family observed the results from their chamber. Every signal, every door movement, every drone adjustment occurred exactly as planned. The Empire believed it was managing a crisis. In reality, it was dancing to John's rhythm. Minor errors multiplied. Systems became temporarily confused, creating delays and misalignments that had no obvious source. Supervisors scrambled, trying to identify the cause. Engineers checked every protocol, yet everything appeared correct. John turned to his family and said quietly, "This is the culmination of patience, observation, and intelligence. The Empire controls nothing it believes it controls. Every action you see now is ours, though they will never know it." Lena smiled, watching the subtle chaos unfold. "And no one was harmed," she said. "Exactly," John replied. "Force is unnecessary when foresight is sufficient. This is what humans do best. The Empire learns not by strength but by understanding the consequences of its own actions." By evening, the station had returned to a semblance of normalcy, but John knew the influence remained. The Empire would continue to react, unaware that every adjustment was part of a human-directed plan. Prisoners had become quietly empowered, guards subtly redirected, and even the AI unknowingly followed sequences laid out by human intelligence. The family gathered for a brief moment, sharing a quiet meal. The stars outside the viewport seemed calm, yet the station's systems hummed with invisible motion guided entirely by humans. John looked at his children. "Remember this, humans do not need to fight to win. We shape the world by understanding it, by predicting it, by influencing it subtly. That is our true power." Leo nodded. "And we are the most patient of all." "Patience and intelligence," John said. "Together they make humans unstoppable." The Empire, powerful and vast, continued to believe it had control. Yet the station itself had become a silent testament to human ingenuity. Every schedule, every route, every report now bore the invisible signature of the family. They had turned observation into strategy, prediction into influence, and subtlety into power. John leaned back, satisfied. "The grand plan is in motion. The Empire will act, react, and adjust according to our design. And when the time comes, they will realize too late that humans are not to be underestimated." As the family settled for the night, the stars outside the viewport reminded them of something John had always believed. The galaxy was vast. The Empire was strong, but human intelligence, patience, and creativity were stronger still. They had achieved the impossible without violence. They had orchestrated a station-wide plan using only foresight, subtle action, and the power of thought. And as the stars streaked past in the silence of space, John knew that the next phase would demonstrate to the galaxy exactly why humans, when underestimated, could become unstoppable. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport of Imperial Containment Hub 9. Inside, the human family prepared for the final stage of their plan. For weeks, they had observed, influenced, and subtly guided the Empire's systems, prisoners, and staff. Now every small action, every quiet manipulation, was about to converge into a single, coordinated sequence, the culmination of human patience, intelligence, and ingenuity. John stood by the table, reviewing the final steps with Lena and the children. "Everything we have done so far has been preparation," he said. "We have influenced systems, trained allies, and created patterns the Empire will unknowingly follow. Today we execute the final moves," Lena nodded. "No mistakes. Timing is everything." "Yes," John said. "The Empire believes it controls the station. It does not. Every action they take will now follow the path we designed months ago." The first step involved the AI. John had embedded a carefully constructed logic sequence into its routine maintenance protocols. At precisely 14:23 local station time, the AI would reroute drones, adjust door locks, and shift schedules in a pattern that opened multiple corridors simultaneously. To the Empire, it would appear as a normal maintenance adjustment. To the humans, it created opportunities they had long observed and prepared for. Leo and Mia checked their signals, making small adjustments with perfect timing. A flick of a foot, a tilt of the head, a subtle signal with a cup. They communicated quietly with prisoners and Real. Everyone moved in precise harmony, following patterns embedded in memory and reinforced over weeks of practice. Real, the technician, handled his part flawlessly. He rerouted power lines, adjusted sensor arrays, and ensured that the AI followed the sequence exactly. Each movement was small, almost invisible, yet collectively they formed a network that controlled the station's flow without the Empire realizing it. Then came the prisoner's role. They carried out silent tasks they had learned from Lena, signaling shifts, moving small objects, and creating minor diversions. Every action reinforced John's plan, shaping outcomes without force, without weapons, without conflict. Outside observers, guards, supervisors, even other staff noticed anomalies, but only superficially. Doors unlocked at unexpected times. Drones paused in their patrols. Schedules shifted slightly. No one suspected that the humans had orchestrated it all. They thought it was random error, minor mismanagement, or technical glitch. John watched the sequence unfold, a calm smile on his face. "Step 1 complete," he whispered. "The Empire is following our path unknowingly." The next phase involved creating minor crises that would force the Empire to redirect resources. The AI and human staff believed they were reacting to real problems. In truth, every movement, every reassignment, every adjustment had been planned in advance by the family. For hours, the station operated under this invisible choreography. The humans remained quiet, patient, observing every detail. Every door that opened, every drone that hesitated, every corridor cleared, everything moved according to John's calculations. Lena looked at John. "They are following, exactly as we predicted." "Yes," John said. "The Empire acts only within the framework we allow. They think they are in control, but every step is ours." The culmination of the plan was a final sequence, the family's escape. Not a violent escape, not a confrontation, but a carefully orchestrated series of events that allowed them to leave the hub unnoticed. Drones paused, doors unlocked, and corridors aligned perfectly. Prisoners carried out their silent signals, ensuring that no alarm was triggered. Rill handled the technical side, guiding the family through the labyrinthine systems. John led his family calmly through the corridors. Every step was timed, every movement rehearsed. They passed guards and sensors without incident, their actions invisible within the hub's chaotic adjustments. It was not luck. It was human intelligence, patience, and foresight. When they reached the shuttle bay, the final step unfolded. The AI, following John's embedded instructions, cleared the shuttle for departure without standard checks. The family boarded quietly. Rill gave a subtle nod, signaling that the final part of the plan had been executed perfectly. As the shuttle lifted off, the Empire remained unaware. Supervisors reviewed logs, engineers checked systems, and guards patrolled as usual. Minor errors and anomalies continued, but no one could trace them to the humans. The family had left, but the influence of their actions remained embedded in the hub. John looked at his family, smiling. "We are free," he said. "And yet the Empire does not even know it." Lena exhaled, relief and pride mixing in her voice. "All without fighting." "Yes," John said. "Intelligence is stronger than force. Patience is stronger than weapons. And humans? Humans endure and adapt." The shuttle moved through space, leaving the orbital station behind. Stars stretched endlessly around them, vast and silent witnesses to human ingenuity. The family had not only secured their freedom, but they had subtly exposed the weaknesses of the Empire. Minor glitches, misalignments, and inefficiencies now existed in the hub that no one could explain. "This is only the beginning," John said. "Other systems will notice similar errors. Rumors will spread. The Empire will question itself. And humans? Humans will continue to adapt and thrive." Leo looked out the viewport. "Do you think they'll ever figure out it was us?" John shook his head. "By the time they suspect, it won't matter. Humans never fight alone. We shape outcomes quietly, cleverly, and without violence. That is our greatest strength." Mia leaned against her father. "I like that humans can win just by thinking. John smiled. Exactly. We do not need to conquer with weapons. We conquer with intellect, patience, and creativity. That is what makes us formidable. Lena looked at the stars. And yet we leave behind a lesson they cannot see. Yes, John said. Every system we touched now carries proof of human ingenuity. They may not understand it, but they will feel it. That is enough. In the following days, as the family traveled to a safe location far from the Empire's reach, news began to filter through the Galactic network. Supervisors in other hubs noticed anomalies similar to those in Hub 9. Engineers questioned AI routines. Minor errors multiplied, creating ripples across multiple stations. The Empire had been shown, subtly and indirectly, that humans were not to be underestimated. They did not need weapons, armies, or violence. Observation, intelligence, and careful influence were enough to change outcomes across an entire system. John, Lena, Leo, and Mia continued their journey, blending in with travelers, observing systems, and planning for the future. They had proven that humans could survive and thrive even in the heart of the most powerful galactic empire, not through confrontation but through cleverness, patience, and insight. One evening, as the stars stretched endlessly outside their shuttle, John gathered his family. Remember this, he said. We are humans. We adapt, we endure, and we prevail. The galaxy may not understand us, but that does not matter. Our strength lies not in destruction but in creativity, intelligence, and foresight. Lena nodded. And we do it together. Yes, John said. Together, as a family, as humans, as thinkers, as survivors. That is why the Empire underestimates us, and that is why they will never truly control us. Leo and Mia smiled, understanding the truth in their father's words. They had seen it firsthand. Observation, patience, and clever action could accomplish what force never could. Humans could shape outcomes, inspire change, and survive even the most overwhelming systems. As the shuttle continued its journey, far from the reach of the Empire, the family looked at the stars. They were free. They had prevailed, and in the shadows of distant systems, the legend of the most ruthless human alive, and the family who shared his intellect, had begun to grow. Across the galaxy, the Empire would continue to function, unaware that a single human family had shown it the limits of its control. Systems would fail in small ways. Errors would spread, and the knowledge, the pattern, the invisible influence of humans would ripple outward, touching countless worlds in ways the Empire could not see. John leaned back, content. Humans do not need to conquer with force, he said. We conquer by thinking, by observing, by understanding. That is what makes us unstoppable. Lena smiled, holding the hands of their children. And by doing it together, we show what humanity can truly achieve. The stars stretched endlessly before them, vast, silent, and beautiful. And for one human family, the galaxy had become a place where ingenuity, patience, and intelligence were the true powers. Powers no empire could ever fully control.